I just had to wait what felt like 10 hours just to freaking connect to the Wi-Fi. This is off to a great start already. So this is a idea that I saw Lala over at Books and Lala do, where basically it was titled Unpopular Books, or Books I Love That Are Unpopular or something, or Unpopular Books I Love or something like that. Basically, she went to her Goodreads, saw what the average rating was on a book, and if it was low and she had rated it high, then she would kind of talk about it. That's what I'm gonna do today. The first book that I'm gonna be talking about is Outliers by Kimberly McCreight. I really like this book. I love this book. I think it's a fun time. I've since read the second book in the series, and I also really enjoyed it. It's basically a YA thriller that has another component to it, I would say. If I say what it is, then it's like kind of a spoiler. It has a whopping 3.29 on Goodreads, and I rated it a 5. I don't know if I love it so much because I'm unexperienced in thrillers. A lot of people didn't like how the character so quickly got over certain elements of her anxiety. Those elements get explained in the second book because of things that get revealed in the first book, like the characters in it, and I just think it has a really interesting plot. So yeah. The next one is Vinegar Girl by Ann Tyler. This is rated a 3.40 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 stars, but I really loved it. A lot of people didn't care for it, I think, and I think because a lot of people maybe went into it not knowing the story of Taming of the Shrew. Like, if you go into it, I personally love Taming of the Shrew. It's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays, shows, and I love it. So when I went into it, it was very similar and familiar to me. If you're familiar with the storyline, then I think it's a great modern adaptation. I would not recommend it if you're not pretty familiar with the Taming of the Shrew, because otherwise it's weird. The next book is Impossible by Nancy Warren. This has a 3.65, and I rated it 5 stars. I love that book. I don't know if it would stand up today. I can't necessarily guarantee that if I had read it today that it would stand up as much as when I had read it initially when it first came out. But I thought it was really good, and that's all I'm gonna say, because I don't know if it would hold up anymore, because me like 4 or 5 years ago, we're not very similar. So, but that is one that I rated high. The next one is Curious Minds by Janet Ivanovich and Phoebe Sutton. This is Janet Ivanovich, and I love Janet Ivanovich. This is a new series that she started a couple years ago, and I read the sequel this year, and I just think it's a really solid series. I think it's different from her other stuff, and it got a whopping 3.67 on Goodreads. As far as Janet Ivanovich books go, I think it's one of her best books. So I think it's a lot better than her previous work. This next book is a book I read a really long time ago, and I've been wanting to reread it to see if it would be just as good. But it is Enchanted IV by Sarah Beth Durst. And I remember when I read this, falling head over heels in love with this book. I remember thinking, this book in its entirety, plot and characters, it was just so good. Like, I distinctly remember this book being like the best thing ever. And it's just this really cool plot where it takes place like at Princeton, like Princeton University, and it just like deals with like dragons and gargoyles, and I just remember thinking it was so neat. I have to reread it, but I'm just so curious to see what I would think now, because at the time, which was now 6 years ago that I read this, which I'm so old. I'm so old now. It was so good. It was so good. I remember thinking it was thebomb.com. I just saw this book and I was like, why is this rating not over 4? The next book is Splendor Falls by Susanna Kearsley, and obviously I gave this book 5 stars because This is my favorite Susanna Kearsley novel, and I want to know why it's only at a 3.71. What? I remember reading that book and just loving the atmosphere and felt like I was so involved in that novel, which is really hard for me to do. really hard for me to get really like sucked into like the scene, the set, like the where it's taking place, like the actual like imagining of what this place looks like. I was so immersed into this entire book, and I'm just shocked and amazed it does not have a higher rating. So the last book that I'm going to be talking about, because then we start to get into like the 3.8, which at that point I don't think is that low of a rating. I catch chowing down in the background, so I apologize if you hear him eating. He's a pig. The last book we're going to be talking about is Lumberjane's Unicorn Power, which is the novel that like is set in the Lumberjane universe. This only has a 3.79. What are you guys doing? If you love Lumberjanes, if you read Lumberjanes and you decided to read this novel, I don't understand why you didn't give it 5 stars. Because if you love the Lumberjane series, then you would love this book, because this book is so religious to the graphic novel series. I'm talking that it reads like you're reading a novel version of a Lumberjanes graphic novel. Like, I've been reading Lumberjanes for years now, and that ish is good. Like, it is spot on. It is spot on with the series. That's all I'm gonna say. I just don't understand why I didn't get a higher rating. I mean, if you read this and you haven't read Lumberjanes, then yes, I would suggest not doing that, because it's dumb. I mean, there are like, what, 8, 9 volumes out in the series? You need to read them first, and then read that book. So that's it. I don't know if I ended up coming off a little pushy in this video. I don't know. But naturally, I'm gonna feel a lot of feelings, because these are books that I really like or love, and other people are like, eh. So naturally, I'm gonna have a lot of feelings about it. That's all I got for today. If you guys have any other unpopular opinions in the terms that other people hate books that you love, let me know which books those are down below. I love to love a book that everybody hates. That's all I got for today, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope I shall see you in the next one. Bye.